screen is.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our first virtual plant clinic, I believe, officially of the summer. I'm just going to take a moment here and make sure everybody has a minute to log in before I get us started. Right now, I'm getting our chat set up so that you can chat, and I've got our questions open. Okay, perfect. All right, officially good afternoon and welcome to our first virtual plant clinic of the summer season. Today we have special guest Pam Powers with us, who I'm sure many of you all have attended classes and webinars with before. We're happy to have her back. I'm just going to make things really quick today and then hand it over to David and Pam. For anybody who's new, this is a webinar format, so we can't actually see you or hear you. If you have questions during the class, you'll type those questions into the Q&A box on your Zoom menu, and Pam and David will be taking those questions periodically at some good stopping points during the presentation today. Pam, thank you so much. We're really happy to have you here as always. And David, I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to you so that you guys can get started.
Terrific, and thanks everybody for joining us. I'm really excited about today, having Pam here with me.
Yeah.
Pam and I we've been good friends and colleagues for many years,
Long time.
always trading stories back and forth and swapping little horror stories of what we see going on in the garden kind of thing. And so we were having those conversations, and Pam said, David, why don't we do a plant clinic
Yeah.
together? I said, well, Pam, isn't that perfect? Because we're starting back our virtual plant clinics
Yeah.
on Thursday. So this is fantastic. And our focus is going to be on roses today. But first, Pam, how about you kind of introduce yourself a little bit? Where did your passion for roses come from?
Oh my. I guess my parents were gardeners. My father vegetable gardener, and my mother perennial and rose gardener. And so I've always grown roses for 30 years. And it's probably as long as I've known you and some of the others.
You're just a glutton for punishment.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So everybody knows I am not a rose grower. If any of you have been watching the our virtual plant clinics, you'll hear me often say I have 60 different plant species in my garden, but nobody in the rose family. Because in all fairness to them, I've always tried to be fair and say, hey, roses, you got to put a little more effort into it. They take more care and management, but they also give you more than I think any other plant I can think of in terms of like flower power and continuous blooming and stuff.
I agree. You know, you can have blooms from mid-May until November in the current climate.
Yeah. And last time I checked, I think it was like over 3,000 or 4,000 different varieties, so many different ones to choose from.
Well, it's actually registered roses. There may be that many different varieties, but registered roses, it would surprise you, 35,000.
Oh,
American,
way up
well,
there.
American Rose Society is the registrar for roses worldwide.
Right.
Yeah, and so we have the Modern Rose database, and all registered roses are logged there.
Yeah. And how many are in your garden?
Well, not close to 35,000. Some days it feels like it.
Yes.
But I have about 130 in my garden, but I care for over 1,000, throughout the area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad to have your experience with you here, because I always defer to you on when it comes to growing roses.
Yeah.
I do remember when I was young, I had my little rose garden. I've had some experience, but I go for the easy stuff. Anyway, so you want to kind of jump into the presentation?
Let's do it.
So the big story out there, of course, is newsflash. It's hot outside. It's a heat wave out
It's
there.
hot.
So I asked Pam to kind of start out talking to us a little bit about caring for roses in these kind of conditions.
Yep. So the story today is hot weather tips. And this is from Louis Ginter in Richmond, Virginia. It's the botanical gardens there. Pretty incredible. You have the vertical lift, the climbers, and keeping the roses going all year, which is our goal and challenge. So, and in hot weather, gets a little more challenging. You
Great.
want to?
Yeah, either one of
Oh,
us go
you
there.
want to, or you want me to? Okay, yeah. So today's agenda is quite simply hot weather rose problems and how to solve them, not be surprised by them. You can diagnose them, it's so much easier. And then your questions.
Yeah, as I always say, we'd love to have this as more of a conversation. So
Absolutely.
we'll be taking a break about halfway in for questions, and then we'll go through a few more of your pictures. We'll have questions because really that's where we all learn from each other and stuff that works. So as anything comes in, put that in your chat box, send it to Sally. We certainly look forward to your participation. So hot weather rose problems and how to solve.
Yeah. So if you just want to, I I'm very simple. I like to boil down everything to some very simple terms, but at this time of year, um, you've had your first big flush of blooms, whether you grow 3 roses or 300, and you want to keep up with your pruning and deadheading. All right. And then the next valuable tool is to know the disease cycles, know what's coming your way, because that will help you up for prevention, and it'll also help you get prepared. I find that if I have the go-to product, in my garage or nearby, it's no big deal to take action very early on. The other thing I do is I practice integrated pest management in my garden. I'm sure, David, you do the same in yours with your
Oh.
perennials and everything.
Absolutely, which to me is really, we use the word monitoring, but if you're a gardener, you want to go out and visit your garden and your plants every
Yes,
day. But we
yes,
can call it monitoring. I think that what it really is kind of these acronyms or anything for, hey, going out and being attuned to what's happening in your garden and looking
yes.
for potential problems and issues before they even get started.
Yeah. And I think with integrated pest management, you're taking action early. And so you can perhaps choose the most environmental friendly action first. And then if that doesn't work, you take the next step. And if that doesn't work, then you take the next step. Um, so I think that's important. And when we talk about some problem areas, we'll talk about, what would be a cultural fix, what would be an organic fix, and then what would be the next step if that doesn't work. The checking the garden often, as David says, is really important because just like if you get like a cut on your skin and you probably want to wash it out and treat with alcohol. Well, that's a preventative measure so it doesn't get infected. But what if you don't do that and you let it go and you fester? Oh my gosh, the next day it's red and it's infected. What are you going to do? Well, you know, cleaning it out at that point may not work. You may have to you have an antibiotic, So again, if you get it early and you can do something simple like cleaning and washing it out, you can avoid a problem down the road. And preventing infestations of any kind is really important.
Yeah, and before we leave this slide, again, most everybody out there knows this, but when you say pruning and deadheading,
Mhm.
uh, sort of what are we talking about? Because again, just even the term deadheading and stuff.
Well, it's akin to, cleaning up your garden. So if these roses behind me are cleaned up, they're appropriately deadheaded. Um, so if when this bloom is spent, it's about cleaning up spent bloom. I'm not just going to cut here. I'm going to go down and cut here. All right. So I'm allowing at the 5 leaf set outside eye the next cane to a bud to form here, bud eye to form and turn into a cane. But if I had any little disease on it, here's one. Okay, all right. I I I cleaned up this bush. All right, that has a little black spot. I take it off. boom, it won't spread, all right? But pruning and deadheading, as blooms are spent, you're going to cut them out, okay? And particularly with rain and other factors at play, you, if you don't do it, you run the risk of different fungal diseases, materializing, or you start to develop what I call nonsense growth in a bush. And nonsense growth attracts uh, critters, if you will, and also it impedes airflow. So I'm always sure that the bush isn't so cluttered, we don't get good airflow, because airflow is important in preventing disease.
Yeah, so I always use the word just grooming your plants, and that's what it is. And sometimes I get people who are new to gardening and it sounds like work. And I'm like, no, 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 this is the fun part
Yeah.
of gardening.
Yeah.
You shouldn't look at it as work, but going out, cleaning up some dead leaves, cutting off
Right.
bent flowers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the nurturing part. Don't look at it as a chore. Look at it as
Yes.
I'm grooming my plants, keep them
It's the
looking
fun
nice,
part,
keep it
actually.
healthy. Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's it. All right.
Okay.
So what do we have? Let's see what's next.
All right. So roses, they're heavy feeders and heavy drinkers. And as the temperature increases, just like with yourself, if in the winter time, you're going to drink less water than you would on 100-degree day if you're working outside. I mean, the uptake increases, and you have to keep them well hydrated. So, water, 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 and I say it 3 times because for most plants that have a good that are in a good hole, you want to water at when it's 90, 95 degrees, uh, probably 3 times a week, and give them a good drink of water. At least 2 gallons. I wouldn't water more than 2 gallons to a rose bush. I cut it off there, but watering 3 times a week is important. The other thing is some people, grow roses in pots, and that pot may be terracotta. It dries up very, very quickly. So you have to go out and water that. You want to water that pot, maybe every day, just because it dries out so quickly. Or maybe you have a different kind of pot that holds water better, or maybe it's not in the blazing sun, and you can figure out how that it will get water, that you should water it maybe every other day. But roses in the ground, please at this level, water minimum, 6 gallons a week.
Absolutely. And I've sort of been talking to a lot of people about watering, and I'm saying, first of all, it's going to be your pots and containers.
Yes, yes,
Above ground, they're more exposed. They don't have the same volume of soil.
yes,
They're growing in potting mix basically for good drainage. So
yeah,
some smaller pots you might even find if it's 100 degrees this weekend, you might be watering them a couple times a day.
if it's a 1 gallon pot, for example, because you did a new cutting or something, oh, that's a lot of work.
Next, I'm gonna say anything that was recently planted, like if you
Oh.
put any shrubs or including roses in the ground this spring, they do not have a fully established root system.
Right,
So again, they have a greater volume of soil, more expansive roots than the one in the container does, but still not your 3-year-old rose. So that's gonna be my next most vulnerable.
yes, absolutely, very vulnerable population.
Yeah. And then, like I say, if it's mature, well established, then then that's probably, I'm thinking, more your 3-time-a-week
Yes,
rose.
yes,
Right.
exactly, exactly.
So it's not a one size fits all kind of recommendation. Another question I had for you, Pam, and you'll get a chance to ask your questions, but
Mhm.
this happens every time I see Pam. Uh, I try to differentiate in some cases, in some plants, between heat tolerance and drought stress.
Yes,
Because if I'm watering, I'm hydrating the plant, I'm providing that water. But it's my understanding roses and 100-degree temperature just don't, they're just not really that compatible.
right, right. But you like I said, you don't want to give your plant. You don't want to say, oh, well, 3 times a week times 2 is 6 gallons. I'm going to give my rose, 6 gallons of water, because you're doing a disservice there. But roses, actually, they can tolerate the heat.
Oh, I
They-
can't, because I always
they-
thought, like, I see roses in England and stuff with cooler climates, and I always thought, well, just the heat stress that we put them on, or I see
Yeah.
roses slow down sometimes. in
They
the
they
summer.
do slow down. They do slow down, and the what happens is, they have a quicker bloom turn. So where, from the time you cut in the spring or late summer, you will, you get like a 42-day turn. In summer, that speeds up because the roses that bloom are immature. And sometimes they're missing a layer of petals. You have a 42 petal rose and maybe it only has 35 because the bloom cycle was so quick, it cycled through quick. So that's how they'll react. They'll bloom quicker. But I,
So if I understand, they'll bloom quicker, but might be smaller?
Yeah,
Is
oh,
that-
they'll be
that-
smaller.
Coming out of the high.
summer
temperatures,
roses are
okay.
smaller. They're definitely smaller. They're still beautiful, but they're smaller. Yeah.
Good, well,
Yeah.
sorry, I'll let you get back. I'm asking all my questions, but
Yeah. But
that's how I learn so I can help others more.
well, and I tell you what, if you have, like I do, roses in your 3-gallon pots that you purchased in April or May, but you still haven't gotten in the ground, send that in. I want to know if people have the same problem I do, because I have pots. I confess, I have roses that I haven't gotten in the ground.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm appalled to hear that.
Ooh, okay. So let's talk about food. There's so many feeding programs, and it can be kind of a world of confusion. So I like to simplify it and break it into uh, food. And my preference, we've got a lot of different fertilizers and pest controls and stuff up here, but I like to simplify it and use organics. And organics come in 2 forms. They can be solids or liquids. An example of solid is this rose tongue, a great product, all organic. And different organics have different ingredients. This has a little bit, where are we? Oh yeah, okay. This has a little feather mill, poultry manure, bone meal, and alfalfa meal. Alfalfa meal is great in organic mixes, and usually you see it because alfalfa meal has a little growth hormone in it, and that helps the plant a great deal. So organics, and the thing with the solids, I want you to think about it this way: solids last longer, but are slower acting. So if you put down an organic, you read the directions because they all give different instructions, but it's generally going to last you like 4 to 5 weeks. Some will say 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the amount you put down. So it's gonna be a little slower acting. It interacts with the soil, and the organics are good with what's going on in the soil. Okay, it encourages good microcosm under the soil. So solids are great, and it adds tilth and volume to the soil as well. So I'm a big believer in organics. The liquids, yeah,
On your
like
side.
liquids. This is just fish fertilizer, and it boils down to it's fish guts, and it's processed and it's in a liquid form. Smells really bad, but is really good. So this is a liquid. It depends on if you like to work in the dirt. Some people really love to work in the dirt. I'm one of those. I like to work things into the soil. Or if you'd rather put it in a watering can or have an liquid applicator, and you can spray it on, or you can pour it into the soil. Some people find that very satisfying, pouring something into the soil. Both products are very beneficial and they're organic, okay? And then there are amendments that go in the soil, and I'm a big believer in amending the soil and with microbes, and there are different kinds of microbes. David and I were just talking about, how you measure, or at least how they market, the effectiveness of microbes, but they measure it by, grams per.
No, I think it's like, here, I have to read it because I can't even remember. We just found it. Colony forming units.
Yes, colony
Per
forming.
gram.
Yes, colony forming units per gram. And so you look for that, and some have 2 billion, and they'll, and I mean, research will show how these microbes help build the roots, and you really want that microbe colonization going on in the soil because it attracts beneficials, to the roots, and the roots can absorb better the food that you're giving them. So it's like helping that digestive tract, if you will. And so you want the soil, the roots absorbing all the food that you're giving them. That's how they get their benefits. And so microbes are really, really good for the soil, and you can be your own judge. I mean, there's so many different kinds of microbes out there, but this colony forming per gram is how they market it. And I've studied one that says that's 3 billion colony forming units per gram. And it's really amazing how the roots take hold of it, and how if you use them in transplanting or planting, the bush will take off like a rocket.
Exactly. So this is just one product's out
Yes.
there, and it's got the bacteria and the fungi and stuff and
Absolutely.
some nutrients, and it gets mixed in the soil at time of planting.
Yes.
But when you say amendments, of course, I also think of just, again, we're pretty much starting with
Yeah.
Virginia red clay,
Yes.
and not, there's bags and bottles of this, but just getting compost
Oh,
into the soil as well, which
Oh,
I don't want to overlook, because I
yeah.
think that is the key thing.
absolutely. And that's, so important in planting. I'm with Arlington Rose Foundation. We have a recipe for dirt, and people say, a recipe for dirt? You've got to be kidding. And it's pro mix with mycorrhiza. It's compost, and then a third of the clay that comes from the soil. And then we add a few amendments from that. And I tell them, if they're doing a big planting, they should get all those ingredients because it's economical and efficient. But if they're just planting one pot, or they're digging, a hole for 1 or 2 roses, get a bag of Happy Frog for Maryfield and plant away, because that's very rich and has the nutrients built into it.
And one other thing is, we're talking about this for maintenance of how often would you be fertilizing? And is there anything we would do differently right now in the summer, in the hot weather, or something that we would do otherwise?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you can keep it simple, and you can do rose tone or any solid organic, and you do it along with the bloom cycle. And bloom cycles are spring, summer, and fall. So we're done with our spring bloom cycle. Your garden is deadheaded, and it's putting out new growth to get ready for the summer bloom cycle. So some people just continue with rose tone just because it's easy, or any, of the organics, because it's easy, and they do it spring, summer, fall. Don't have a lapse. Don't say, well, it's hot, I'm not going to feed the roses, because that decision will show up in the fall. And there's nothing like fall roses. There's nothing. They're bigger, and they're brighter, and they're magnificent. And your bushes should be really large and showing off in the fall. A lot of people like springtime roses. fall roses is nothing like them.
I'm so glad you said that, because I've always thought, again, I don't grow roses, but in the fall,
Yeah,
because, right, could be November and you feel like the season's winding down and suddenly you get the
yeah,
most gorgeous roses
right,
of the year
right,
coming
right.
out and stuff.
Yeah, you'll stop feeding solids. Labor Day is generally the cutoff. I push the season a bit, and I do liquids, to keep them blooming in October. So the to me that's a little passe rule. I don't do solids then, but I'll do liquids like up until the third week in September because those October blooms are spectacular.
Right. Well, want to see if we have any questions come in regarding the cultural stuff. Pam's all prepared to talk about the insect, the
Yeah.
disease, the pest management
Yeah.
next. But before we get into that, Sally, do we have any questions or anything coming in yet?
We have a lot of questions.
Okay, well,
So if you all want, I can just start at the beginning and you all can let me know when you're ready to move on. Some of them are related to what you've been talking about, some are not. So the first question that came in was about animals eating roses. For anyone having issues, do y'all have any recommendations to stop that?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
like saying,
This person,
Yeah.
her name's Jackie, or his name, is having trouble with animals eating their roses.
Oh, yeah. So there are lots of deer treatment, but they are a menace. And I don't know if David remembers this, but this was I've been deer free 10 years ago. I solved this problem 10 years ago. And short of sleeping outside so they smell your scent, to get rid of them. And I tried every home remedy. My neighbors were bringing me hair to sprinkle around, and I had shiny pots hanging from tree limbs. So spare yourself some trouble. I use a deer repellent. And what I do, I think it's how I use it that's really important. And this is a liquid, and I think you have liquid fence here.
we do.
And you mix it, or you can buy it already mixed, and you spray it on approach areas. So you figure out where are the deer coming from. They're coming from the woods. So they're walking by this tree. So you spray those limbs. You spray that tree. They're coming from the neighbor's yard. You spray the side of their house. You spray the side of your house. You spray a light post that they may be passing. You spray the vegetation before you, like the boxwoods or any perennials, before they even get to the roses. Okay. And so you're doing a perimeter and you're doing an approach area. And then you're spraying, lightly spraying.
You got some pretty tolerant neighbors
Yeah.
out there spraying the lampposts and such, yes.
Then you're spraying then you're lightly spraying your rose bushes, but not heavy spray, light stuff. And I find it to last 3 weeks. It may indicate 4 weeks, but I do it 3 weeks. But if it rains, if it's a heavy rain, you have to reapply. If it's a sprinkle, you don't have to worry about it.
Good.
All right.
There are
Okay.
electric fences too, but that's another
Yeah,
session.
We'll talk about
Yeah,
that.
that's a whole class on that. Okay, next question is about drift roses. Is it okay to prune off the old blooms now? So I guess that would apply to any rose. Can you prune off the old blooms at this point? Like our deadhead, basically.
Oh, you definitely want to deadhead any spent bloom.
Okay.
And on this as an example, you're not just deadheading the bloom here, you're going down because you're actually telling where the next cane should come. So I'm just deadheading here, and the next bloom comes out this way. And here's a bloom. It's not spent. I wouldn't cut it. It's beautiful. What is this? Bronze star. So this is a short stem on it. So I'm not going to deadhead it here. I'm going to go down to a 5-leaf set but strong growth, hit it here and.
But if you have, because they have particularly, they're growing drift roses, something like drift and
Oh.
knockout and some of these shrub types. Are you as
Yeah.
fastidious with that? But you still deadhead, but. I mean, I've even at times just taken hedge
Look.
trimmers and.
Go at it quick because you've got a lot of blooms. Yeah, I
Right.
missed the drift part. Oh, absolutely. Just go after it quickly and don't hesitate to I mean, you don't want to just prune the top. You want to go down a little bit. Because one thing with drift roses, they can tend to get a little powdery mildew. And so proper pruning can help with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That actually leads up. So you had mentioned about going down a little farther to to deadhead the flower. Is there a rule for how far, or do you just look at the rose bush and decide where you want that next cane grown from?
Oh God. So there's uh spring pruning, and that's when you're gonna do your surgical pruning.
Gotcha.
Think of it more like deadheading to just clean things up
Just keep
and
things
to
neat.
to get set for next growth. You don't go here because you'll have spindly growth. You're just gonna go down just a tiny bit and deadhead for strong growth because nothing can grow bigger than from whence it cometh. So if this is spindly, your next bloom your next cane can never be bigger than this part. So you want to go down just a little bit lower here or here, and deadhead.
Gotcha. That's a good explanation. That's helpful. Alrighty, next question, and you all just tell me when you're ready to move on. Have the Japanese beetles already moved through the Northern Virginia area, or do we still have that to look forward to?
Yeah, that's in Pam's upcoming slide. So we'll
Okay, coming
answer
up.
that, but
Yeah.
we're prepared to do the pest management
Yeah.
here.
Gotcha. Here's a question. I'm gonna look for some that are on some topics that you guys have addressed. I see one right here. Should I mulch my roses to help them tolerate the heat? And would that help in the winter as well?
Um, Definitely mulch your roses to tolerate the heat,
Okay.
and also to tamp down weeds, and also for a nice cosmetic look. Um, an inch to 2 inches is good. You don't want to mulch above, the bud union, because you don't want to suffocate or overheat or prevent new growth from coming to the bud union. I've seen roses, mulch way up and it's, 100 degrees. Think about putting on a fur coat in 100 degrees. You don't want to do that because then you're going to bake the plants. I think that's true of trees as
Oh, yeah, so
well.
my way of saying is always 1 or 2 inches, because
Yeah.
I'm conservative.
Yes,
Kind of industry standards are gonna say maybe up to 3 inches, but you, at that point, start getting too much of a good thing.
yeah. I'm in the
Yeah.
1 to 2 inch camp as well, and yeah, it does help with moisture control as well, and in your potted plants as well.
Oh, yeah. That's
And I'm not real fussy about what type of mulch. I mean, people come in with that
Oh,
all the
no.
time. I'm sort
Oh.
of like, hey, that's just personal preference. That's color, size, texture, price, that's
Right.
just personal choice.
Yeah, I'm with you, David.
Yeah. So,
Alright.
let's say maybe we have time for another question, then we'll move on to some of our pest control.
Yeah. Here's a question about fertilizer. So if someone has an old bag of fertilizer, in this case it's rose tone, but how long can that fertilizer be used? Like if they found it in their shed.
So if it's dry, it's still usable. If
Okay.
it gets moist and things like rose tone, being organic and mostly poultry manure, if it gets moisture in it, it kind of starts to become a block. And then it starts getting moldy and it starts smelling really bad and it kind of goes downhill from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So organics, I really try hard to not store them.
Okay.
Always encourage people to kind of buy what you need. Because also feather meal, bone meal, alfalfa meal, that's food sources for rodents. So if you have that in your garage, the little critters will actually get attracted to it. So if the bag's in good condition, if it's still dry, use it. If it's really degraded in there or kind of become a block or something, you could still put it into a compost bin or something like that, but I would not put it on my roses.
No,
Gotcha. Okay.
Hey, we're gonna jump back and talk about Japanese beetles and some of the other pest issues that go with roses, and then we'll take some more questions. Oops, too far.
okay. I wager most of you are familiar with black spot. In there, it's kind of the bane of roses, but there are some preventative steps you can take, and that is with fungicides. And I look at fungicides as my friends because they protect leaves on roses, and that's what you want to do is always protect your leaves because that's the powerhouse of the rose. That's where all the photosynthesis take place, and your rose can never become big, bold, and beautiful if it doesn't have its leaves. So I always protect them. I stay away. David knows this. I stay away from herbicides. I stay away from try to stay away from miticides as best I can and insecticides. And fungicides are low on the impact scale, and they're very, very beneficial, for roses. So there are two fungicides that rosarians across the country use to keep the leaves looking like this. I hope you have a garden full of beautiful green leaves at this point. If you use a systemic fungicide combined with a contact fungicide, and you do that every 10 to 14 days, you can maintain the integrity of your leaves and black spot be gone. And there are generic versions of those, and you can see on the slide Honor Guard and Dithane. Those are just the generic names. If you're at Merrifield, you want to look up Infuse, which is a systemic, and Mancozeb, and you combine those two, and you get dual action, and you will have great leaves like this. And I think that's what you want. You could also go and other people say, oh, if you get black spot, just pick it off the bush. Well, yeah, if you have one plant and you have the time to pick it off or pick it up as it falls to the ground, that's great. But pretty soon you have nothing but canes and no leaves. And again, leaves are the powerhouse of the bush, and you need those leaves. So the other route someone may go is to plant more fungus resistant roses. Now, you notice I didn't say completely fungus resistant. It's more fungus resistant. And shown this beautiful purple rose is Hansa. It's in the category of rugosa roses. And rugosas are from the 1900s. And they have these leather-like leaves and prickles on them. So deer don't like them and won't eat them. And the beauty of this, most of these rugosa roses, they're perfect for kind of a countryside, and they grow large and they're very profuse and they're fragrant. And at the end of the year, instead of producing blooms, what you do is it produce hips. And hips are these orange or red, very shiny encasements of seeds.
Similar to a crab apple.
Yes, yes. And they hold seeds. And so they're very, very attractive. So in the fall, instead of blooms, you have these beautiful hips. And then it is very profuse in spring and summer. So it's a great example of if you don't want to treat your leaves with a chemical, such as infused and mancozeb, you go for a more fungus resistant rose. And they are, I mean, nothing is bulletproof or guaranteed, but it's just an example of, how to avoid, if you will, disease treatment.
Now, I think the Rose Society, don't you have sort of evaluations of sort of which plants may be more disease resistant than others? And
Yeah,
to help with those
yeah,
choices?
we do. We absolutely do. We have brochures that feature more disease resistant roses. And also, American Rose Society has a handbook, and they rate roses are rated, believe it or not, and hardiness is one of 12 factors. And roses are tested for 5 years before they ever get a rating. So from the time someone creates a new rose to the time it's introduced, that's usually like a 5 to 7 year cycle. And then they're rated for another 5 years. So you have a lot of history and knowledge about the rose, and they get a rating on a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being more prolific, hardy, cold resistance, disease resistant, etc. And then I usually don't go for anything that's less than like a 7.5 on that scale.
Because I'm always preaching that choosing the right variety or cultivar makes a
Yes.
difference. So
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
so with 35,000 roses, and
Ye-
I don't grow on, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna help you on that, so I have
Yes.
to rely to
Yeah.
specialists like yourself.
Yeah.
But same thing, like I've worked a lot with turf grass, so the same
Yes.
evaluation process goes on.
Could
And whether you're into turf or
spot on.
apples or roses, it makes a difference.
Spot on, yes. And we've talked about, how orchards are similar to, to the rose world. I mean, they're in the same family. So yeah, you have to choose carefully.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So we talked a little bit about black spot, other favorites.
Yeah, so hot weather problems. Oh my gosh. Hot weather problems, spider mites. And I hope you can see this. There's this, there are probably like, I think 30 some variety of spider mites, and you know familiar in this area, these little orange dots. But what you want to look for is the backside of the leaf, which has webbing. You see in between those leaf sets, it's this webbing.
I said, if by the time you get
Yeah.
here, you are in trouble.
You're in trouble.
Yeah, that's, you don't want to get to
You
that
don't
point.
want to get
Yeah.
to that point. And the back of the leaf, instead of being smooth, it's like sandpaper. It's like grit. So the my favorite way to prevent mites, and mites are a hot weather problem. They're here in spades, but they typically appear in a garden. The thing is, they will appear in the same spot. So they love bricks, and they love cement and stones.
Yeah, they tend to go to the hot,
They
dry.
they go to the hot spot in your garden. And so I always know, to watch out. There's two in the garden that will get mites before anything. And I always, do my check on those two and say, am I seeing anything wrong? But for all my roses, and I recommend this to people, is this power washing the underside of your rose leaves. So literally, I'll put my thumb over my hose, or I'll get, a good jet nozzle, and I just go to town, power washing the underside. I'm not watering, I'm literally power washing the roses. And generally it works out because it's after I've deadheaded my first bloom. And so it's perfect time for mites, and it's perfect time to do this power washing. And I make a mean face when I do it because I mean business.
Yeah. I bet that feels satisfying, but again, I'm just thinking back to your IPM message, is monitoring, it's what's going
Exactly.
on, and your cultural practices
And-
are your first line of defense always.
Always. And it's very effective. And if you can do that, twice a week, you can keep mites at bay. There's no question about it. The other thing is order predators. but you really have to sync things up to order predators to take care of your mites, because predators require a humidity point, usually 60% humidity, and they require a consistent food source, because if you bring them in and there's the young ones that are not as aggressive and then the aggressive ones, that you you have to order a week in advance. They come on ice, so you have to be ready to release them when they arrive. So those logistics, woo, it's a lot if you have a busy life, but and if you have a closed environment like a wall garden or a closed-in patio that you're doing your growing in, you can be successful with predators. I find that an open environment, they quickly move on because they're looking for the food source. And it's not just roses that get mites. I mean,
Oh, yeah, they're very much generalists
uh,
and they'll go after
lilacs.
almost anything.
Oh gosh.
And then I guess as your very last resort, when it gets out of hand, then there is the miticides.
Yes, so following an IPM approach is a miticide, and Avid is probably the gold standard. It's a contact killer. It's also translaminar, meaning it penetrates the leaves to get to the underside, and it has 28-day protection. There's neem oil. Here's neem. So neem oil, ready to use. It will suffocate your mites. I always careful in using neem. It is organic, but careful using it in hot weather and in direct sunlight, because can fry your leaves. Okay. Landscapers will tend to use neem, and that's why you see some completely brown knockouts, along the road, because they use neem middle of the day and not overcast skies, direct sunlight.
Absolutely. Keep an eye on our clock. We're gonna move
Yeah.
this out because I know you wanted to go into a little bit of detail on
Oh.
this pest.
Yeah, rose midge is specific to roses, and it has become a real problem in this area. It came from the Midwest, and it traveled up the map, and it really hit Virginia, DC, Maryland, and the Ohio Valley really hard. A big infestation, and it's kind of on the new side. I mean, we used to get midge, but it would be a touch of midge. This is a rose midge, and what happens is you will it's a silent killer. You will see what looks like a burnt match where a bud should be. So I see a nice beautiful bud here, but if this plant had midge, I would see that burnt match look, or it could be a bent over crooked bud. Because the midge tried to get it, but they just weren't strong enough to do it. But it means that they're there. And you can't mess around with midge. This started about, I'd say, 12 years ago in this area. And I find that people still aren't familiar with midge. And so this really pays to do inspection of your garden. And if you see it, you cut it out, okay, and you put it in a bag, and you be sure the bag is closed, because it's an insect that's soil dwelling, and the adult goes up the cane, and she will lay eggs on the most succulent part of the rose bush, which is the emerging bud. Okay, the emerging bud, and it prevents a bud from ever developing. And the first call I ever got regarding this was probably 12, 14 years ago. And it was a rose grower. I mean, she'd grown roses for a long time, had 150 roses. And she said, Pam, what's going on this year? She says, I don't have any blooms. And I said, oh my, I said, I'm about bloomed out. And I said, tell me this, do you have buds? And she said, well, what a crazy question. And she went out, had me on the phone, went out, looked, came back. She says, I don't have any buds. And she says, it looks like these matchsticks all over my bushes. And she had 100% midge infestation. So she had a big task in front of her, cutting it out. And then there's a treatment, and it is with BioAdvance Insect Killer Complete granules that you put around the drip line and water it in. And that will take care of your midge for that cycle. And then it's a reapplication in about 10 weeks, like for the next bloom cycle, and then a reapplication after that. And once you have midge in your garden, you need to always be on high alert and put down this insect killer complete granules.
Well, that's good. I remember you bringing that to our attention at clinic. Again, that's why I always
yeah,
look at
yeah.
these, like what we're doing today is an exchange of information
Oh, that's
uh,
right, I
kind
remember.
of thing, because again, I wouldn't be aware of that if it
Yeah.
wasn't for you sharing that information with
Right.
me, because we all kind of get into our little areas of specialization.
Yeah.
We're gonna be kind of quick on this
Sure.
because there's not a whole lot you can do, and I want to make sure we get to
Sure.
the
So
beetles.
this is botrytis, and in mild cases you have kind of freckled blooms or spotted blooms. Severe cases you have what you're looking at here. There's balling, the bloom fails to open, and you have botrytis is a petal fungus. So there's no reason for any kind of quote disease treatment. The treatment is great sanitation, good ventilation, or you say, oh, a big rain is coming. Let me cut before the rain and bring your roses inside and create a beautiful bouquet. Or you can go out, and depending on how many roses you have, those of you that are online and you have 100 roses, you think I'm crazy. If you have a few roses, you can go out. Oh, I'll do it here. Look, and shake like this. You just hold this and you shake.
A little rose.
Yeah, you can shake the raindrops out of it. And this is in this way, that's the good sanitation, because if those water droplets stay in the bloom, it's going to look like this after a few days of sunshine. So you want that great sanitation. And this is botrytis. And I showed this because we had a very rainy April, early May, and I saw botrytis in every garden I was in.
That's what I say. This is probably about a month ago, and we hit like 5 days straight of rain. Our rose managers, we're going out twice a day,
Yeah.
deadheading,
Oh,
just cleaning this stuff up.
just cleaning it, right?
So
Yeah.
it's something that,
Yeah.
again, they require a little care, a little attention, but
Yes.
that's makes it also that much more rewarding when
Oh.
you get a beautiful rose.
Absolutely. I mean, the preferred way is to know it's going to rain and go out and cut those blooms while you can.
All right, so what's the rundown Japanese beetles? I know we had one of our viewers asking about if
Yeah.
we've seen them. Did we dodge the bullet? What's
Yeah.
up?
Well, it's mid-June to mid-July. It's usually a 5-week problem, and they usually arrive about the 15th to 20th. So we're right in that lane. And Japanese beetles, it's not just about roses. It's, grapevines, wisteria, crepe myrtles, you name it. Japanese beetles will eat it. So there are a number of ways to prevent. And if you talk to the extension agents, like in Maryland, they'll say, oh, that's an old wise tale. But I'm a big believer in milky spore. And milky spore targets the grub in the soil. And that's the only thing it targets. It's the Japanese beetle grub, and kills it before it has a chance to emerge as a beetle. And milky spore may be a little, you have to follow the directions exactly, okay, for it to be effective. It's a little on the expensive side, but it lasts depending on the brand that you get, 10 years.
Yeah, I think they put a 10-year warranty on it.
10 years, I mean, my word. So it's worth that upfront effort, the application and the expense, and it does. I've had great result with it. Now, if you put it down today, will it thwart your Japanese beetles? No, you have to give it time to take effect. So the best time to put it down is in fall. Some milky spore applications are twice a year, or two back to back, but most of them are one. So if you put it down in fall, you'll have better control in spring. Won't immediately eliminate the population, but it will reduce it.
Right, but again, you're talking about the larvae, they're in the soil, because as Pam was saying, this is the time of year when the adults begin to emerge out of the ground.
Yes,
So they're strong flyers,
yes,
so
or
you,
they can travel.
so you
Yeah.
could still encounter
Yes,
beetles.
Yes.
And it's too early to say we've dodged the bullet.
Yeah.
We're just going into this season.
yeah, to David's point, so when I put down my milky spore, you'll laugh, I also put it in my neighbor's yard as well, because we have close yards. So just putting it in my yard wasn't gonna be good enough, so I extended it to the neighbors with their consent.
So let's assume you've done all this, but you still have
Okay.
beetles.
Yeah.
Kind of worst case scenario, like, so it's a week from now, 2 weeks from now,
Okay.
and this is your rose.
Well, I wouldn't expect to see that, but you can go around in the morning and you can get a milk jug, have water in it, and put a little Dawn or some soap in it, and then you pick and shake off beetles. You do that in the morning, and you do that in the evening, and that helps you reduce the population, and that's a lot to ask. The other is there are some insecticides that will target these beetles. I can think of a couple, Orthene, 8. Those are two that will help control the insects. It will kill what's currently out there, and then when they take a bite, it will be their last bite. You'll still have beetles coming in because the population is in control, but you'll be killing them off with insecticides. But you have a 5-week problem.
Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, so we'll take a few questions, but Arlington Rose Foundation, which is the organization that I lead, we provide educational and fun events for members. Many of our events are here. Some are held at Columbia Gardens, a Memorial Rose Garden in Arlington, and then at different locations, but we do a lot of events here. We serve Northern Virginia, DC, and Southern Maryland. You can go to ARF information at AOL.com and request an application. I'll email it to you, and you could mail it in if you prefer snail mail, or you can go to arlingtonrose.org and do an online membership. Our website is atrocious. We need to upgrade it, but you can join online, or you can call me and ask for an application. That's my phone number. Or if you have any rose questions, you can use the email to ask me directly. I'm always glad to help. And or you can ring me up and describe your problem, and we'll try to help you out the best we can. Our organization is single focus. We're single-minded. We focus on roses, and I rely on David for everything else.
And I rely on you for everything else, but I just, one last plug is, again, it's been such a good relationship with Arlington Rose Foundation. It's about your website being atrocious, because we both volunteer in various different
Yeah.
parts of our community. But I'm gonna put a little plug out there saying, let's just say, even if you're not actually growing roses or for whatever reason, but if you have technical skills and web
Oh,
design stuff, I'm just saying, volunteer.
Yes.
Your skills,
oh yeah.
whatever group it is, they'll find a place for you to
Oh.
apply your skills. And we need always people, whether it's organizational, logistical, could be bookkeeping, it could be helping us with
Oh.
the technology.
Absolutely.
So,
And we need it
well.
because we're a growing organization as well. I mean, we have, lots of new members every year and just, keeping up with all that, you can volunteer, that helps.
and gardeners are notoriously behind in the technology, so
Oh.
we need your help.
Oh, yes,
Let's-
absolutely.
Let's see if we have time. Maybe we take a few questions. I know we've
Sure.
run a little bit late, but Sally, is that okay? Do we have time?
Yeah, we can take a few questions. We'll stay around for another 5 or 10 minutes. Just for everybody who needs to leave now, we are recording. So if you want to jump back on and get those questions tomorrow, it should be available then on our YouTube channel. So thank you everybody who has to leave now. All right, so our first question is, can we transplant a climber that's not doing well in the ground to a big container so that it can get some more sun, or does it have to be transplanted to another place that's in the ground? Does that make sense? That might apply to all roses.
Oh, so they're asking about, they've got a big climber, it's kind of in a shady environment.
Uh,
Asking about transplanting it, where they could put it into a container or plant it back into a sunnier location. Though I have issues around the whole transplant idea to start with, but I'll let you.
Yeah,
talk.
I wouldn't put a climber in a container, okay? Because those roots are deep, what's going up here is going on down below. So climbers in containers, but I wouldn't do that unless I had to. Transplanting a climber is a big deal. And you certainly want better weather conditions like in fall time, and you'd have to dig a big root ball and have the hole prepared, and it can be done, but as a rule, climbers like roses, they need 6 to 8 hours of sun.
Now, my experience with transplanting roses is a lot of times that soil just falls away. You don't really get a root ball. No matter how careful you are, you end up with a bare root rose. So that's what I'm
and
saying. You
that's
definitely do not want to do this in the summer when
Yeah,
it's hot
Yeah,
outside.
yeah. And you do want to get the root ball with it. That's why you have to dig wide, okay, and deep. And that makes it hard with climbers, particularly well-established climbers. But you want to get that root ball. I always, if I'm transplanting, I have burlap, okay, because I want to dig it out and place it on burlap so I can then tote, if you will, that big old climber elsewhere with the burlap and keep the root ball intact.
Yeah. So fall project and it's going back in the ground.
Yes.
Fall project, planted in the ground. Okay. Next question. How would you rate Miracle-Gro for Roses liquid fertilizer?
Miracle-Gro
for roses.
with
The
fertilizer.
liquid, the
Liquid.
powder you put in water.
Yeah, yeah, you can use that. I mean, if that's what you have, it's a synthetic, it's water soluble, and uh, it will do the job. It depends on NPK, nitrogen, phosphate, potassium. You want to know what your rose needs are, but it's a good liquid, and it's not an organic, and that's why I hesitate.
And I think the biggest things, like Pam was talking about with the organics, how they are long lasting. So the Miracle-Gro is a water soluble. It's going to be the exact opposite. So to
It'll be
me,
short acting. So you get
right.
what, maybe 2 to 3 weeks out of it.
So my understanding, this is the plant will absorb that nitrogen as much as it can within about 48 hours.
Ah, okay.
So not even that long.
But there are other
The
ingredients.
labels, right, will tell you to use it weekly. I usually say bi-weekly, or my thing is, I think it can be used as a supplement.
Yeah.
I don't like to rely on it because it doesn't have that consistent rate. So I might do
Yeah.
a slow release fertilizer. And if I want to periodically supplement with like Miracle-Gro.
Yeah, it's definitely not my go-to product, and it doesn't sound
Yeah.
like it's David's. But I mean, if that's what you have, and you definitely want to keep food on your plant, so you want to know how long acting it is. Solids last longer, okay? Slower acting, quicker action, or your liquids. okay, but they don't last as long.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll still go, it's a great product and I'll still use it sometimes, but if it's like, if I need a,
I'd like
quick.
to use it on annuals and perennials.
right, like if I'm looking for whatever reason, a quick reaction, a lot of times I got an unhappy customer and I want to get them happy.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I love it on
Or something,
annuals and perennials. I do,
Right.
all the time.
Good info. All right, next question. Let's see. We got time for a couple more. Can I prune knockout roses all the way back now since they look really bad after the spring bloom cycle? So this person's knockout roses look really bad. Can they just prune them all the way back?
Well, I worry about look really bad. I'd want to know, you know, what was going on, and did they have rust? Did they have, you know, why'd they look really, really bad? Or were they eaten alive, you know, with pest? And prune way back. I'm prune way back for that. In summer, you know, you want to preserve, you want to do modest cutbacks. You notice when I talked about, we'll pretend this is a knockout. So you're not going to prune here. Like I said, you're going to go here. Big mistake if you went here. All right.
Yeah.
And so when she's saying prune way back, that gives me a little pause. So I'd like to see a picture or something before.
So that might be in
I-
case
Yeah,
it's just
or just like saying the kind of the grooming, the maintenance, you know, trimming it
Yeah.
back, but you're not gonna do a heavy pruning on them now. And
Yeah,
okay.
that's
mid-June going into July, not a good move.
a lot. That's
So
a
if you
lot
have
of
any
stress.
health concerns with your plant, now would be a good time to send some photos into the plant clinic or come in or send them to you at the Rose Foundation and have a look at if there's anything going on, but not to cut them all the way back.
Yeah,
Um,
trimming, that's fine.
Yeah,
Not a
So-
heavy burning though.
yeah.
Sounds good. Okay. Can a ground cover like Creeping Jenny serve as a substitute for mulch and moisture control and heat protection?
I'm gonna say serve different purposes, but I'm all for like having a ground cover in there. You know, so Creeping Jenny, I guess would be as good as anything under there.
Sure.
I think a Creeping Jenny is thriving in kind of moist, somewhat shaded areas. So a lot of times thinking roses that might be in a sunnier, hotter area. I think I've heard people using thyme
Yeah.
as an underplanting.
Oh,
Yeah.
Something low if you want it,
Yeah.
you know. Salvia makes a kind of a good little underplanting.
Yeah,
But
pretty much anything except bare exposed soil. So whether it's mulch
Yeah,
or a living
mul-
ground cover.
mulches, yeah, is kind of the go-to.
sounds good. Okay, it looks like we'll make this our last one. Is midge the same as thrip? So is there a difference in treatment between those
Yeah.
two?
No, they're not.
Totally different. Yeah.
They're
Okay.
not the same. Okay. Midge is going to eat your bud before it has a chance to even develop and bloom. Okay.
Okay.
It has a very quick reproductive cycle, lays eggs in the succulent part. Those eggs fall to the ground. That whole cycle repeats really quick, 14 to 18 days. Thrips will take a light colored rose
Okay.
and they live in the bloom. Okay.
Okay.
And they have antenna and they scrape the dermis off the petals.
Gotcha.
Then the air turns it brown. So it looks like you have a dirty rose.
Okay.
Say, this was pristine yesterday, it's dirty today, I don't get it. If you pull the petals apart and you look, you can midge, it's hard to see. Thrips you can see. You know, they'll be moving in those petals. And it's a little different treatment for that. You can mist in insecticide. I mean, just a gentle mist above the blooms, and it's done.
Okay. All right. All good information. Well, David, I don't know if you all want to conclude with anything, then I'll give you guys, but we're at 3:10 now. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. I'll just issue a quick reminder to those of you who are here that we'll have our recording available tomorrow. And as always, you're welcome to contact me. I know Pam had her contact information on a slide previously, and you can always call our plant clinic and we can all help you we can all refer you around to the correct people. So that resource is always available to you. So David and Pam, how would you all like to close?
I just want to say thank you so much, Pam, for doing this. So I don't know why we took this long to do. I really enjoyed every bit of it. Appreciate you being here
Well,
today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Sally, thank you as well. Appreciate
Thank you. I'm always so glad to have you.
it. Okay, good deal.
All right. Well, you all have a great afternoon. And everybody, of course, please contact us if you have any questions about your plants. Have a good afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.